Well, welcome. And people online. Welcome. Right. Okay, so let's begin by taking refuge in the Buddha. We go for refuge to all the Buddhas, so that all sentient beings may realize Buddhahood. We go for refuge to all the Buddhas, so that all sentient beings may realize Buddhahood. We go for refuge to all the Buddhas, so that all sentient beings may realize Buddhahood. So the new people, are you new to Buddhism? Is anybody not completely new to Buddhism? Oh yeah, okay. Brave. Okay. So I just wanted to check what I could take as given. So today the topic is confidence. Special kind of confidence. But it's from it's one of the topics in the basic training course called Discovering the Heart of Buddhism. We explore what we mean when we say things like heart or mind, or because you talk about, in Buddhism we talk about discovering the true nature of mind. But then when you think what you mean by mind, it's not all that clear. And then you could say, well, actually it's the true nature of the heart. You sort of know what that is, but then it's something almost quite sacred. It's like, but you kind of know what it means. So that's, it's important to explore what do I know about that really. So, and that connects with what is meant by the true nature of mind. It's probably more nature of heart, but then that leaves out some aspects. So I'm very aware that we're translating a tradition from, a different language into English, and so we've got to be careful that we're really connecting to what it's about, rather than getting sort of caught up in jargon of some kind. So once you notice that you know something about what it means, your heart, or your sort of, I know something about what mind means, but it tends to be kind of a bit all over the place. So if we're going to follow the path to awakening, we have to first of all really connect to why, what is it that's we're after, what's the direction we want to go in, so that then we can go in that direction. But we have to have some sort of sense, and we always start with some sense. Maybe it's just to find a bit of inner peace, or find some kind of truth or reality or ease or less confusion, something that's really coming from us. And then we need to develop real confidence in that yes, we know, in a sense, we know what we are and where we're going and what we're aiming for and how to get there, and we've got that knowingness within us. And so the confidence is really looking at, well, have we got that confidence? Do we really trust ourselves? Do we really trust our own power to recognize what's right, what's true, just the way I need to go? Do I have that within myself? And strangely, that takes a sort of courage. You have to already have some kind of confidence, and if you kind of lost that sort of trust and confidence in yourself, then that's the thing to look at and find out, okay, so what's that about? Because if I'm going to follow this path, I've got to follow it wholeheartedly and with that kind of inner confidence. So when I started looking at this topic of confidence with, it was decades ago, I started teaching it on the basis of a course that Rinzai Shikpo gave. I thought I was going to be talking about, and he was clearly talking about, having confidence in our own inner nature, which is openness, ungraspable, all-pervading, clarity, awareness, it's manifesting everything, and sensitivity, responsiveness, which is that spontaneous, or you could say those spontaneous qualities by means of which we respond, and we, the living quality. We're not just passively like a mirror, just reflecting stuff. There's this inner, you could almost call it creativity or power to respond, or this is inherent, and that's always there. It doesn't go away. It didn't come from anywhere. It doesn't go anywhere. It's intrinsic to our nature. Well, you might find that a bit challenging. You think, I'm not sure I agree with that, but that is what we're exploring to see if it is true. So he had that in mind, and I gave a little talk, and then got the students to discuss it. And I noticed the discussion went off in two very different directions. One, with some of the students who had been practicing for a long time with Rinzai Shikpo, they kind of knew what he was talking about. And then there were other people who picked up on this confidence and became very aware that they didn't have it in any sense. Even in social situations, in terms of even any sort of confidence in them, in their own judgment, even like they wanted someone else to tell them, is this right? Is that wrong? I want someone else to tell me. I think there's a term that's often used, which is low self-esteem, isn't it? A sense of, well, how would I know? I'm not very intelligent. I'm not very clever, or I'm very confused, or so that very strongly identifying with that confused side of themselves. So that the idea of confidence at all was something they really wanted to talk about. Just any kind of confidence. And of course you've got all sorts of, I don't know whether you'd call them disciplines, but you've got all sorts of methods that, like psychotherapy and NLP, and there's all sorts of things these days to help people with their confidence, to kind of learn to trust themselves more and to feel them. And I realised, well, that's right. You do need to. If you start the path to awakening feeling very disempowered, and you notice my body language, like sort of you can always feel it in your body, that lack of confidence. And then when you look at the posture, like the Buddha's sitting there, here I am, like this is what I am. This is kind of, I'm ready to start. I'm ready for anything. So I realised it was really important to talk about that we do need to look at that. But what happens is that there's two things going on. When we feel very lacking confidence because of the kind of our experience of life, probably, we feel a bit crushed and feel a bit kind of things haven't gone well, and I feel a bit of a failure. I feel a bit like just very anxious, or whatever it is. I've forgotten what I was going to say. What was I going to say? When you feel There's two things going on. What was I going to say? Huh?
Unconfident, lack of confidence.
Yeah. Two things going on. Well, I think I'll just have to start again. I got so involved in feeling lack of confidence. I sort of stuck there. I don't know where I was going with from there.
You looked at the Buddha and said, ready to go.
Yes, that's to do with the. So I wonder what I was going to say.
What you say about being disempowered.
Yes. Yeah. But then I was sort of talking about the body. Maybe I was going to go on to the body aspect of that. I wonder what those two things were. So when we have that lack of confidence, then it does actually affect our whole judgment, really, because we're already feeling very confused, and maybe not even very, but we might have found some sort of strategy for getting by in life. But it's very dependent on the situation around us. So as long as I've got my job, as long as I've got my routine, as long as I've got, basically feeling I'm in control of things, I can get by. And that's where my confidence lies. And there's all sorts of versions of that. And I was thinking this morning that, when the Buddha talks about the 12 links of dependent origination, that they're all about having not recognized and trusted your true nature, let's say openness, clarity, sensitivity, or your own something unchanging within yourself. Having not recognized that, you don't have any confidence, anything to base your confidence on. So you're going to tend to grasp onto things. You try to shore yourself up with something that makes you feel safe, makes you feel all right, at least temporarily. And if you succeed too much at that, you can get sort of stuck into that sense that is, I feel very confident. I'm a very self-confident person because I know, I know I'm good at this and I'm good at that, and I know I've got this support and that support, and I know I've got all these things, so I'm a very confident person. I can tell you all about how confident I am. But in actual fact, it's all based on the conditions. It's all constructed out of things that you've grabbed onto. So, of course, when they all disappear, you lose your situation in life. What are you then going to rely on? And maybe this is what I meant about two things going on. Because actually, we never do lose that inner capacity to have confidence in just our own being. And in fact, that's what we end up relying on, isn't it? The whole world collapses, and then we pick ourselves up. We pick ourselves up. So what's that wasn't dependent on any of those conditions? What is that then can bounce back and adapt to a new situation? That's the inner confidence. And what is that? And usually we have, it depends on the person, but there are different degrees of access to that. From one point of view, it's there in all of us always, but we don't always find it easy to access it. And it's really interesting to look at how we lock ourselves into a whole little storyline or world in which we feel, like I have been totally destroyed. Of course, it's not possible. How can you destroy something that doesn't have any? It's not of the nature of something that could be destroyed. We're not anywhere. We're not anything in many. That's that open quality we have. So the awareness is always there. It never goes anywhere. I mean, we may fall asleep, but in the morning we don't find that there's no awareness there. It was always there. Just we weren't awake, but the awareness was there. It didn't have anywhere to go. It wasn't produced by anything. So that inner sense of I can trust myself. We can trust that. We'll always be there. We'll always be there. We'll always be able to adjust and adapt. And what are we? Well, that's what we're trying to discover. What we almost feel it. We almost get the whole thing back to front. We almost get the idea. Well, this idea of my world that I've constructed is real, and my mind probably just popped out of it. It's a very common Western view, isn't it? Whereas it's the other way round, that we have this openness, clarity, sensitivity. We are that. Which is actually the Buddha nature, which doesn't have any limit. It's vast. It's amazing. And then it doesn't go anywhere. So we could trust it. But because we don't really recognize it, this is the avidya, isn't it? Because we don't really recognize that, we don't trust it, and therefore we sort of try to find something else to give us confidence. And this is what we're trying to notice, that okay, we can find confidence because of the way our life is working out. May feel this, I sort of think to myself how I don't really notice what confidence it gives me to have a British passport. But somewhere in the back of my, I know at some very basic level there's a certain safety involved in having a British passport. If I were a refugee with no passport that could let me go anywhere, it would affect my whole sense of who I was very strongly. And I have only my inner confidence to go by. How am I going to face the next day? I have no idea where I'm going to be, what's going to happen. What will I rely on then? So it's nice to have the confidence of having a place in society and, as I said, a British passport or whatever. That's nice, but you could be deceived by that, couldn't you? To think, why don't you be like me? Look how I manage each day, But you put me in a situation, another person's situation, I wouldn't be able to manage. I would really be shaken. So it's really important to notice, okay, confidence is confidence, and it has a certain quality to it because you feel relaxed and resourced and, open and awake, and even physically you can feel your body is working, because that undermines our confidence straight away, doesn't it? As long as my body's working, I feel this is me. And I'm quite confident. But if it stops working, you suddenly realise I can't do anything about it. It's actually not me. To base my confidence on my body working well, it's a bit dangerous, isn't it? So this is why we need to look for that inner confidence, which is not dependent on conditions. It's not constructed out of some sort of sense idea I have of myself and my world. But it's a confidence that's just there, regardless of what's happening. And I think you can immediately see that if you could face death with that kind of confidence, you'd be well situated, wouldn't you? Because whatever happened next, you would be ready for it. So, and it's really interesting how recognition of our true nature and having confidence in our true nature ends up being, so that is actually basically what the path to awakening is. Because we get little glimpses of, oh, I think I get a sense of what openness is, or a little bit of glimpse of what awareness or clarity is, or, a bit of a glimpse of what that alive quality of sensitivity and responsiveness is. Yeah. So for that moment, there's a sense of recognition. And then we forget, don't we? Almost immediately. Because we can't quite align ourselves with it. We can't quite trust it. We can't quite just be that, even though that is what we are. Immediately hesitations, doubts, and forgetfulness comes up. And as soon as that happens, we try to grasp. And if you ever tried meditating, you notice if you get any sense of insight or that kind of sense of, oh yeah, immediately you want to grasp, yes, stop there, that's it, I want to stop there. Of course, immediately you do that, you're no longer in that spacious state of confidence, really. So this word confidence is with us all the way, actually. It's lack of confidence. When you think about it, lack of confidence is fearfulness, isn't it? It's just simply, so it's very closely connected with courage. That as long as we don't have that recognition, that clarity of the recognition of what it is we have confidence in, we're bound to slip off into some sort of fearfulness, doubt, hesitation, confusion. So it's quite an interesting exercise to look at what you mean and understand by confidence. As a translator, the word in Tibetan that's mostly used is derpa, which I would probably translate as faith, but that has a different connotation in English. But the connotation of faith that I like is something, it's got a sort of spiritual feel to it, a sort of sense of something to do with the heart and meaningfulness and opening to something greater than yourself. It has all those sort of connotations for me, although I know it also has a very strong connotation of blind belief, doesn't it? You just blindly believe something. But it has this other connotation which I like very much. But in the Tibetan, they talk about different levels on stages of faith, like when you hear about the Buddha's awakening, or you hear about the true nature of reality as openness, clarity, sensitivity, the non-conditioned, you hear it and you immediately feel uplifted and, oh yes, sounds great. So that's the first moment of opening. And how much confidence do you have in that? Do you immediately think, oh, I could never reach it? That would be a lack of confidence. Whereas if you're much more open and think, wow, yes, I want to follow a path that takes me there. It takes a sort of confidence, doesn't it, to think, yeah, I'm going to engage on that. I'm going to try and follow that. I can feel I've got it in me. Not got there yet, but yeah, I could do that. It's really important. Very important to have that confidence. I could do that. And then a bit of realism. It might take a while. So that's the second level of faith. And then the third level is actually conviction arising from knowing. So when you actually arrive and you've recognized that what the Buddha recognized, you know. So it's still got the same name as this is the non-contrived faith, or the non-contrived confidence. That I don't have to, I don't have to think of, oh, I have faith as me, I've got faith in that. It's just like, I've realised what there was to realise. And in a way, that's my own nature, and it's the nature of all beings, and it's the Buddha nature, and it's what Buddhas have realised, and it's beyond time, space. It's kind of amazing. So, so there's this play going on in the course book, and the way I've broken this up into what ends up different names, sort of different kinds of confidence. There's a whole lot of them, and Tara's been pointing out to me how my terminology has been sliding about somewhat. So I promised her I would clarify that a bit, but I'm not sure I've sort of taken off and left my notes behind. I always do that. I did carefully worked out notes. Okay. But I particularly wanted to talk about a section in this booklet about the body. So let me see, how much have I covered? Yes, I was going to start from this, what I've been saying, that there's confidence, which in the book I've referred to as unconditioned confidence, which is, I've been using this term inner confidence for that, and I like the term inner confidence because I think we recognize that already. I think there must have been the two aspects. We recognize within ourselves an inner confidence as well as our conditioned confidence, and we know how much we do or we don't trust that. So some people, very resilient, they trust their own inner confidence, and other people who feel very crushed, they don't really trust their inner confidence. But if they sort through what it is that's the storylines they're holding on to, or the habits of body and mind that they've been holding on to, once that's sort of released itself, the inner confidence is there. It's not something you get from somewhere else. It is actually there, but it's been, and that's where I got carried away. Yeah, it's been overlain by all sorts of experience. It could be traumatic experiences. Well, I mean, just taking birth is traumatic enough, isn't it? There's all sorts of things have happened to us, and some of that we carry with us in our body in a funny way. We have to come back to, well, what is body anyway? That's the kind of thing we're looking at as we go through the whole course. But so one of the first things that we find helpful is, and this is why meditation can be very helpful, but any kind of integrating our body, speech and mind will bring increased sense of confidence. The more we lose confidence, the more disintegrated we get. Like we might be very all bunched up in ourselves, or we might be totally scattered and outside ourselves. We end up in with all sorts of strange patterns of behavior. So just by coming into the meditation and centering ourselves, grounding ourselves, feet on the ground, there's that already starts to address that scatteredness or the imbalances that have been created by by not recognizing our true nature. And actually, if we could really let go of all those patterns and just let ourselves be, that would be meditation. That would be, if we did that completely, that would be awakening. That would be meditation. There's no meditation that's separate from that, but we do have meditation methods to help us to get to that. So that's it's strange, it's sort of the starting point and the goal, both. Is that unconditioned inner confidence in our true nature. That's really where we've got to start from. And so I think probably the path is completely about getting to the beginning. I always feel I'm getting near, as I get older, I'm nearer and nearer to really the beginning, where I could really begin. And I think that's really accurate, because if we get to where we need to begin from, we'd be there. So we've got an intuitive sense that actually that's not it, that's not it, that's not it. What is it? Ah, that's it. Actually, that is it, but then immediately I drop off it, get complicated again. So we're moving towards this simplicity of our true nature and to learn to have confidence in that. And there's degrees to which we've lost touch with it, or we automatically trust it. And like if we do have that resilience, that inner confidence of we can find within ourselves those resources, and that's important, but of course that's not the whole thing. It's but it's moving in the right direction. And although in some ways that inner confidence is all we need, if we sort of start trusting that completely too soon, it probably would be still mixed up with some kind of grasping and clinging and confusion. So we need to have some ability to trust others. You trust a teacher, trust teachings, be willing to listen, to open, but at the same time not just taking it in and think, oh, that's how I'm supposed to think, but is that, and having enough confidence in your own ability to discern, is that, do I really understand that? Is that right? Is that true to my experience? Is that what I'd call that? So there's a kind of openness and a listening, and at the same time applying it to yourself and having the confidence to do that. Too often I find people sort of think, okay, I want to learn meditation. Meditation's a good thing. It's going to have a good effect. Oh, it's supposed to be this, it's supposed to be that. Okay, so I'm going to sit and meditate. I'm going to sit for an hour, Everybody's sitting for an hour, so I'll sit for an hour too, Okay, so sitting, okay, an hour. Oh, I've got to get through an hour. Oh, what, am I doing it right? Am I supposed to be doing this? So the whole time you're kind of checking, you've got a job to do and you're checking out what you're supposed to be doing, and you're trying to conform to what you think you're supposed to be doing. And it's amazing for how many years people would do that without actually checking with themselves what's actually happening. Did I get the right end of the stick in the first place? Or why am I doing this? It's a torture, but I go through it because I want to be part of the group. You can do better than that. I'm sure that's not negative. I'm sure there's worse things you could do, but There's also definitely better things you could do. You could, especially if you've got the opportunity to come and talk to colleagues and teach and check out when it says that, does it mean this? Because if I take it to mean this is what happens. And for sure, you would benefit from somebody's, feedback on that. So that takes confidence, doesn't it? To admit what's really going on. But often people feel so lacking in confidence, they think, I wouldn't dare tell anyone that that's what's happening. Maybe if I try harder, I should get somewhere, and then I can talk to the teacher. I often find that, I'm not getting anywhere. I can't go and talk to the teacher because I'm not getting anywhere. So I'll sit here for longer until I get somewhere, and then I'll go and talk to the teacher and tell them where I've got to. I can tell you that's not the most interesting of conversations. What's more interesting is if somebody's, I don't think I've really got this. I think I'll go and ask again. Then that's a very interesting conversation. Let's have a look then. Let's see what's happening. And I do find that people do pick things up in very different ways. It's almost like an individual thing. So I do feel, when you've got a Sangha like we've got, and I'm still around, it's a big opportunity to have the confidence to think, I've got it in me to understand this, but I'm not understanding it. So what's happening? This is what's happening. I go and talk to someone about it, see what they say. If you within a Sangha context. So there's this trusting yourself, trusting others, trusting the teachings. But ultimately, it's all leading to the same place of trusting your own true nature, recognizing it, and then what really takes the time is developing that complete trust in it, lack of hesitation and doubt, and being able to embody it. Yes, so you've got people without self-confidence or low self-confidence, don't trust themselves, they don't speak up, they don't. They need to be more bold. And then you've got people who have a lot of self-confidence and tell you, what's what, and that they've realised this, that, and the other, and they feel very strong, very confident, and very happy, and very blissful, and meditated for years, and it's fantastic. And it's interesting. Something a bit fishy. And then, invariably, it changes, and they go through a rough patch. And then they wonder, where's my confidence gone? And I think, that's a good opportunity now to look at what's the difference. Well, even it might have been quite a subtle way. You were kind of, in a way, you thought it wasn't conditioned, but then you realised suddenly it was conditioned, because when your experience changes, then you lose confidence. So obviously your confidence was pinned on having certain experiences. So that's still dependent on conditions. So that's your opportunity then to learn. Okay, so what's the confidence? What is it I need to recognize about my true nature? That it doesn't really matter if it's a negative or an unpleasant experience. That's when they call that equalness. You can test the level of your realization by your equalness. If you have equal appreciation for every situation, you've obviously cracked it, haven't you? But I don't even need to experience anything negative for me to know that I don't have equalness. Like the thought of having my tooth drilled at the dentist, and I notice, there's no equal. Really, that would be, yes, a good place for me to practice, but I'm not choosing to go there. So we're moving all the time away from what's conditioned confidence to an inner confidence. It's confidence that isn't conditioned, isn't contrived, and you could say that our true nature is the non-conditioned, that is nirvana, that is the Buddha nature. So we're moving towards our true nature as we move towards that inner confidence more and more confidently. Moving towards confidently. No. Yes. So going back to ordinary confidence, if you're a person with lots of hesitations and doubts or anxiety, and even meditation doesn't really, just sitting down to meditate is almost like a trigger for more anxiety or more. You need to really start connecting to just confidence in general. Forget about whether it's conditioned or not conditioned. Just what how can you arrive at some sort of confidence? And in the meditation booklet and in here, there's a whole section about the body. And Tara was pointing out how I slide from talking about the body as if it's like very you're grounding in the body. You can awareness of your feet and your buttocks on the chair, the ground under you, you're centered. And it sounds like, oh, that's all about the body. And then I suddenly go back into, well, actually, the body itself is openness, cloudy sensitivity. It isn't anything, it isn't anywhere, So, wow, that was a big jump. But that, it also means that when we say, really grounding in the body, it's kind of an intuitive understanding rather than actually, body as separate from mind kind of way. It's more like, what do we mean intuitively when we experience ourselves sitting in a chair with our feet on the ground? What does that feel like? Not what is my body, but what is that feeling of stability, feeling of, this is more. Why should that feel? What is it in my inner self that is responding to that feeling of solidity, groundedness? Something's responding to that. So the mind and the body are not sort of two separate areas. They're kind of like one and the same. Because you're only experiencing the body. You're experiencing it, aren't you? You then make up an idea, I have a nice body, or I have a sick body, or I have a weak body, or a strong body. That's almost like a secondary idea. But the first sense of body, the reason you're talking about body, is because you are it. And you're not all the different bits. Somehow you're more, what's the word for it? I suppose you'd have to say you're primary. You are you, and then that has a body aspect to it. If I analyse it into all the little bits, I can't really identify them as me even. Have you ever thought about your stomach? Your stomach, for example, I call it my stomach. But then if I think, okay, there's my stomach, I can imagine it in my mind. So where am I? Where am I in that stomach? It's really funny, isn't it? Where do I get into it? What have I got to do with it? And yet, I can't say it's not my stomach. when I'm talking about, my nature, my true nature is openness, clarity, sensitivity. Like me, I'm talking to you really from my heart. That it kind of is the body, isn't it? Because when I'm really speaking from my heart, you can tell through my whole body. So what is that? So when you're talking about body, you're talking about something quite magical and direct. So if you do have problems with your body, you don't have to sort of home in and focus on any problems you've got with the body. It's more like using that sense of, okay, so there's a kind of, almost like there's a center to the mandala, there's a center to this world, and it's here. I think it's the here-ness of it, that I'm experiencing it directly. And it could be quite, you could be quite imaginative. You could imagine you had a different body to the one you've got. You could imagine a body that was, hundreds of feet tall. Great big hands and feet reaching out to the end of the universe. Like just really center yourself in that and the feeling of the ground. And you could be huge. Why not? So the body's, it's you. It's you and your world. It's your body. That's so. If for example, Tara and other people have talked to me about how when they try to be aware of their body, or they try to sit and meditate, and they sort of come into their body, instead of feeling very open and relaxed, it sort of seems to trigger a tension and anxiety. So then how would you meditate on something that helped you to feel grounded and stable and integrated? And you've got to experiment, really. Experiment with what you maybe think of times when you felt very free and relaxed and very, very, very happy to be yourself. Maybe it's when you were a child, you're just being yourself, feeling happy. Maybe you can think about it when I'm out and walking on the hills or something, or when I'm swimming or something, when I'm feeling really. So when you think being aware of the body, be aware of it how it is then. What is that? Or you could even move your hand or foot or toes or something. Just be aware of the freedom of that, and something that you can really come home to, come back to. Or it might be just something in the environment. It might just be the sound of the water running in the river. It's interesting that a running tap doesn't have the same effect, does it? A dripping tap in particular. But you could do. You could just think, oh right, that's something that brings my attention back. It brings my focus back. It brings my attention back. And I can really come back to that. And it's spacious and it's open. The body is spacious and open. Sounds are spacious and open. Or even smells, you can smell the dinner cooking. You sort of very relax into that. Probably you find it very distracting. You find all your thoughts would be about food. Get busy. Is that something burning? So yes, all the time you're reading instructions, you need to really think about what effect they're having on you, rather than think, I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to realize there's no self. I often get that one. If I think self, if I think I have stop. If I'm thinking thoughts, I should stop. If I'm to find peacefulness, I have to stop my mind thinking. And it's quite interesting, even though you might hear the instruction many times that you won't be able to stop your mind thinking, you still think to yourself you will be able to stop your mind thinking. That bringing the mind back and bringing the mind into that, towards that, recognizing your own nature, at some point the thoughts will stop. Oh, they did stop. Oh, look, they stopped. You get really excited, and of course that's more thoughts coming, isn't it? Because you know, even that thinking, oh, I haven't had any thoughts. And often when we think we haven't had any thoughts, it's actually that we've fallen asleep. We just haven't noticed what we're thinking. So, but you know, noticing these kind of little, because we haven't really recognized our true nature, we keep setting ourselves little projects and little goals and little things that we try to hold on to and succeed at and do what we're supposed to do. And it's really important to notice when that's happening and have the confidence to think, I don't have to do that. I don't have to do that. I could try a different approach. And that takes confidence, to recognize I could try another approach. So when it says awareness of the body, I think it's important to recognize it's all of a piece. It's not like a separate thing. You know, we're aware of our body as something separate, but it actually is intrinsic to our experience of our own nature, that we have in a way, the source of it all, where our intention is coming, our feeling of what's right is coming from our heart, isn't it? And then that's always has some sort of an embodied expression. And there's always some kind of connecting and opening and connecting, receiving, giving, between, if you like, our body or what we are and other. Yes, I mean, it is intrinsic to our nature that there's this ability to open to and receive from other, isn't there? So, body is really an interesting one because that is the interface, isn't it? Like, that up to that point, it's, you know, sort of like that's my nature, and then I open to something which is of the same nature. I open to others. So then that needs, if I have confidence in my own nature, when I open to the nature of others, I'll recognize it and it'll be very alive and in a way not really separate. Like when you're dancing, it's a dance because you're not really separate. So that, but at the same time, there's a really clear sense of what your body and the other body, in some sense. It's almost like pre-verbal, isn't it? You're kind of sensing, you could say through the body, but it's not a big heavy thing that's separate from what you are. And Tara was noticing that I made that jump from talking about the body as if it's something, you know, ordinary, to this kind of amazing quality of what body really is, just in a few pages. That she wanted me to talk about that so that she had it as a reference, as a recording. So, was there anything there that you wanted to ask further, Tara? Or is that enough for now?
I think that's great. Thank you.
Good.
Very helpful.
Good. So, look at that for timing. I don't know if anybody wants to ask anything right now. No doubt we'll be coming back to it, yeah?
Some of what you've said has played into things I've been thinking about exploring recently, and you meant around sort of childhood attachments, and you mentioned about in childhood might be a place where you remember feeling happy in yourself.
Yeah.
And forgive me, because it can be quite a raw subject, probably I'd hazard to say for all of us, and some overlapping here, sort of psychological use of the word attachment and the sort of childhood attachments that we have, and the concept of having a healthy childhood attachment reflecting in behaviour that in a child that's often more confident. And I know that's sort of a social confidence, but it's also potentially confidence in herself. And then that links to, well, just as beings at any age, what is that attachment? So we can actually feel more confident in ourselves when we have a loving connection, or we feel heart connections in a group, or we belong, or we're feeling loved within our family unit or something. So, and I think also sort of loneliness and being detached from others consequentially can affect how well someone can access their inner confidence. So my question is a little bit like chicken and egg to some degrees. Is that, you said if one is, I heard you say that if you're in touch with your inner confidence, you can be sensitive and aware of other people's. But actually, can it be the other way around as well, that actually it's harder to be in touch with one's inner confidence without a loving connection with other people? Something.
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of thing that in a way, what's the word, gets in the way of our inner confidence. But if we have that bad experience when we're young, then we do then have that. The danger is that then we've kind of really cut ourselves off, and we might be able to be coping, but we're not really relating. And as you say, in a loving relationship, in a way we become more aware of that, and then we can start to work with it. Whereas if there isn't any loving, you could actually sort of continue to be cut off. But that you've got a kind of confidence because you've learnt to be cut off. And this is where it gets so confusing. You find a strategy for I don't care. You know, I know my mother doesn't love me, but never mind, I'm quite strong, I can get on with things. So you're doing quite well, but you could do better. I don't know if this is really touching on what you're saying. I mean, if it were that you could only ever find inner confidence if you found the right kind of relationships when you were young, that would be very sad, wouldn't it? So that all of this can be, you know, some things are helpful, some things set us back, but even the setbacks are opportunities to learn more clearly than, because if you've always had very loving relationships around you, you may think, well, you know, I really know how to relate really well, I don't have any problem, until actually it all goes wrong, and then you suddenly realise that was all conditioned, that actually underneath it all, you didn't have that. You weren't really connecting to your inner confidence. So it's a big wake up, and in some ways it's a blessing if it collapses, because then you do have to look at it. I don't know if I'm touching on your question though.
So I guess I didn't really have a question, but sharing.
Wanting to talk about that more, yeah.
Confusing around attachment.
And then also the way they use, I think the way they use attachments psychologically, I think perhaps because in the Buddhist thing that grasping an attachment is the thing that's the problem, but there's also, you know, that energy exchange of being together with another person in a healthy way, as you say, where the communication is working well. If you call that attachment, it's going to get confused if you talk about attachment in a negative way in the Buddhist. So that, you know, that But I think some psychologists do use attachment for that, don't they, for a good, healthy relationship, in which case, that word's being used in two different ways. But of course, the one leads to the other, because if you have a really good relationship with somebody, naturally you become attached to it. So when it breaks up, you do suffer from that. But again, that's good. That's a wake up to like this kind of relationship, which is going really well, is actually more the natural way we should be relating with everybody and everything. So if we just think it's only in that one, then that's grasping, and of course you come to grief because something happens and it's no longer the same, and then you're like, oh, what happened to all my heart connections? Actually, you always have them. It's completely, we are not separate from each other in a very profound way, not just because we all depend on each other for our food. We actually are inseparable from each other, which I find so interesting, that modern materialistic thinking couldn't really accommodate such a view, and yet we still use that language. We still say, oh, my heart goes out to them, oh, I'm holding you in my heart. I haven't found anybody yet, however materialistic their view is, for whom that doesn't mean anything. Which is very interesting, isn't it? I still, like people who don't believe any religion or anything, they'll talk to me about their loved ones who are still with them. I know she's still with me. And I know they don't have any belief that would justify that, but I actually think that their intuition is right. Which is interesting, isn't it? Okay, well, we've got years ahead of us, hopefully, to discuss this more again and again. We dedicate this punya to the enlightenment of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings realize complete and perfect awakening. May the heart's awareness awaken in the unawakened. Where it has begun to stir, may it never fade, and may it awaken fully. Chanchu samne rinpoche macha panam jejejik java nyamba mapadang kane kandu pelwasho. Chanchu samne rinpoche macha panam jejejik java nyamba mapadang kane kandu pelwasho. Chanchu samne rinpoche macha panam jejejik java nyamba mapadang kane kandu pelwasho. Right.